What is the secret to happiness? There are a lot of factors involved. Having adequate food, housing, income, health, a sense of meaning and purpose. But I bet you already know what the most important factor to our happiness is. Deep down, we already know what's most important, but we don't always keep it in the forefront of our minds. We get distracted and sidetracked by the things that our society tells us is most important and that we need to prioritize. It has us chasing success and wealth and fame, but deep down, we already know that those things won't bring us happiness. When I was working as a counselor for a mental health clinic, we had to do these assessments and ask people lots of different questions. And one of the questions was, what is most important to you? I probably asked this question to hundreds of people over the course of several years. And the answer that they gave was pretty much always the same. It was my family, my loved ones. It was always people. In fact, I don't think there was a single time that wasn't the answer on the questionnaire. Relationships are the most important factor for our happiness and well-being in life. Period. I found this to be true not only in my personal life, but my professional life as well, and scientific research confirms this to be true. There's this documentary called Happy, which examines people from all over the world and looks at who's happy, who's unhappy, and why. And out of all the people that they studied in all the different cultures, they found that happy people had one thing in common. They all had close relationships in their lives. They all had community. Even more striking is the Harvard study of adult development. It's one of the longest and most comprehensive longitudinal studies of adult development in history. It's been going on for about 80 years and counting. There's a very interesting TED Talk about this given by the fourth director of the study, Robert Aldinger, and I'll link to it in the description. And they studied people from different educational and economic backgrounds. And the number one takeaway that they've learned from this study, the number one thing that impacted the health and happiness of the participants was their relationships, the quality of the relationships in their lives. Those who had close family or friends were happier and healthier in life, and those who didn't had the opposite. They suffered more health problems and were unhappier. It's the same story all over again when we look at the happiest countries of the world, such as Denmark. Their culture prioritizes social life and community. Community is also one of the common factors of the blue zones. And if you don't know, the blue zones are places around the world that scientists study because there's a high concentration of people there who live to be over 100. And community is always part of those cultures. They all place a high value on family and social life, and they structure their society to prioritize that. It makes sense that we are happier in community with one another. We have evolved to live in community. When we lived as hunters and gatherers, the group unit was absolutely essential. It provided us safety, security, support, entertainment, everything. The community helped you raise your children and took care of you when you were sick. It offered protection from all kinds of danger, and people worked as a team in order to survive. There were no loners. If you were cast out of the tribe, it was basically a death sentence. In today's world, you're not going to die right away if you don't have friends. But science tells us that you're most likely not only unhappy, but also at risk of health problems. Studies show that loneliness can present the same risk of heart disease as smoking does. We were already in an epidemic of loneliness before COVID-19, and that's only made matters worse. Now, over 3 out of 5 Americans report feeling lonely. We have rising rates of depression, anxiety, addiction, and suicide. The CDC reports that 50% of all Americans will experience a mental illness or disorder at some point in their lifetime. In our culture, too often we rely on our phones and TVs in order to feel connected. We watch shows and TikToks so that we can feel as though we are part of other people's lives. But when we get tired of them, we can just watch something else or turn off the screen. It's convenient. You don't have to deal with real people and their problems. Real relationships take work. They're messy. You might disagree and get into conflicts. You might actually have to grow and change through your relationships. We have to stop relying on TV and social media for connection. They are the junk food for our social fulfillment. They give us a little bit of satisfaction, but in the end, they leave us feeling empty. What we need is the nourishment of real relationships. Building a healthy social life is like going to the gym. We know it's good for us, but it takes a lot of effort to get results. It's not easy to build relationships, but it's worth it. Our relationships are what give our lives meaning. So we have to be intentional. Relationships in our culture are not just going to come naturally. We have to put ourselves out there, seek connection, and have a willingness to be vulnerable. There are lots of ways to build community, and people get creative, whether it's getting involved with local organizations or getting involved with sports or going to meetup groups, meeting neighbors, collaborating with people on projects, or joining a church. I personally have gravitated towards church because of my interest in spirituality and the deeper questions of life. We need a space in which we can talk about the big stuff. Where do you go when you need to get real with other people? Where do you go when you need to talk about the things that really matter to you in life? The things that keep you awake at night? Whether it's your fear of death or your troubled relationship with your father or your addiction or your doubts about God. There are not many venues in which it's appropriate to talk about these kind of things outside of a therapist's office. Isn't that crazy? Shouldn't we be able to have more spaces in which we can have these kinds of conversations? I recognize that church has not always been that place for people. Far from it. But I think that ideally, it should be. For me, spirituality encompasses the deepest parts of our lives. It's where we can talk about meaning and purpose in life. It's supposed to be a place where we can question and doubt openly, where we can struggle and find support. I envision church not as a place that you go once a week to pay your dues to God, but a place where you can move through life together with your community. It should be like a family, where you go through significant life events together, like birth, marriage, death, and other rites of passage. What would it be like to have this kind of close-knit and extended family again? What would it be like to be part of a community that is your tribe, your gang, the people that are going to have your back no matter what? We need a place where people are committed to supporting each other in that way. People are starving for that. But it's up to us to build that kind of community. We can't wait for others to do it. We have to be the ones to take initiative and to remember that we're not alone in the struggle. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if so, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons, and I'll see you next time.